There is a moment that happens in motorcycle dealerships every week, and almost nobody who experiences it ever talks about it afterwards. A man rides in on a cruiser he has owned for years. It runs. It is clean. He has kept the oil changed and the chain adjusted, and he is genuinely a little proud of it. He wants to trade it in against something newer. The salesman walks out, looks at it for about 4 seconds, and comes back with a number so low that the man assumes he has misheard. $400. Sometimes nothing at all. Sometimes a sentence that is worse than a number. We're not really taking those right now. And the man rides home trying to work out what is wrong with his motorcycle. Here is the answer, and it is going to sting before it helps. There is nothing wrong with your motorcycle. The dealer's problem with it has almost nothing to do with the machine. And by the end of this, you are going to understand why the exact thing that makes a cheap cruiser worthless to a dealership is the same thing that makes it the best value in motorcycling. Start with the trade-in, because that is where most people meet this first. A dealership is not a museum, and it is not a charity. It is a business that pays rent on floor space, and every square meter of that floor has to earn. A 15-year-old metric cruiser with 40,000 miles on it occupies exactly as much floor as a new bike, and it will sit there far longer. Then there is what the dealer has to do to it before it can be sold. Safety check. New tires, almost certainly, because tires that old are finished regardless of tread depth. Fluids. Battery. Anything the inspection turns up. That is real money and real labor hours. And on a machine that might retail for $2,500, those hours eat the entire margin before the bike ever reaches the floor. And there is a third thing, which dealers do not say out loud. Selling a cheap old motorcycle to a customer means owning that customer's problems for the next year. When something goes wrong, and on a bike that age, something will. The buyer comes back to the dealership, not to the previous owner. The dealer has bought himself a small, ongoing liability in exchange for almost no profit, so the offer is $400. Not because the bike is worth $400, but because $400 is the number at which the transaction stops being a favor. The service department is where it gets colder. There is a rule in this industry that is not written on any wall and that nobody advertises. And once you know about it, you will start noticing it everywhere. Riders call it the 10-year rule. A great many dealerships will not work on a motorcycle older than 10 years. This is not a rumor. Go and read the owners' forums for almost any brand, and you will find the same conversation happening independently. BMW riders, Ducati riders, Goldwing riders, Hayabusa riders, all discovering it separately and all equally surprised. In some cases, it is a decision made by the individual shop owner. In others, riders report it coming down from higher up. The reasons the industry gives are boringly practical and mostly honest. The first is parts. Manufacturers are not obliged to keep producing replacement parts forever. Many parts for a 10 or 15-year-old machine are still available, but not all of them. And a shop that starts a job it cannot finish has a customer's motorcycle occupying a bay indefinitely while a part that no longer exists fails to arrive. The second is liability, and this one is more human. Old motorcycles have more than one thing wrong with them. A shop takes in a bike for a carburettor job, and while it is there, the mechanic notices the fork seals, the swing arm bushings, the wiring somebody spliced in 1998. Then the bike goes back to the owner and something unrelated fails a week later, and the owner is on the phone convinced the shop broke it. Dealers have had this conversation enough times to decide it is not worth having again. The third is economics, and this is the one that explains everything. Labor costs the same regardless of what it is bolted to. Replacing a clutch is the same job on a $2,000 cruiser as it is on a $25,000 bagger. The same hours, the same rate, roughly the same bill. On the bagger, the owner pays it, because the repair is a fraction of what the motorcycle is worth. On the cheap cruiser, the owner looks at an estimate larger than the value of the entire machine and walks out. The dealer knows this before you arrive. He has watched it happen. From his side, taking your bike into the shop means a decent chance of doing a diagnosis nobody pays for on a lift that could have held a paying job. And there is a fourth reason, which the industry admits more quietly. The technicians coming into the trade now are extremely good with diagnostics and much less experienced with mechanics. They are trained on machines that tell you what is wrong with them. Plug in the laptop, read the fault code, replace the indicated component. It is a genuine skill and modern motorcycles demand it. Put those same technicians in front of a carburetor with no computer to interrogate, and a lot of them are working from first principles for the first time. Not incapable, just slow. And slow is expensive. A shop that charges by the hour cannot put a 2-hour job on a bike where the diagnosis alone takes 3. So that is the picture. Your cheap cruiser is worth nothing at trade-in, and there is a decent chance the dealer nearest you will not put it on a lift. Now turn it over, because everything I have just described is a description of an opportunity. Every one of those reasons is about the dealership's economics. Not one of them is about whether the motorcycle is any good. Nobody in that building said the engine was worn out. Nobody said the frame was tired or the gearbox was going. Think about what these machines actually are. The Honda Shadow, a liquid-cooled V-twin in the 750 class, built in one form or another for decades in numbers that run into the hundreds of thousands. Honda did not engineer it to be exciting. Honda engineered it so that a first-time buyer in a market Honda wanted to own would not come back angry. The Yamaha V-Star 650. Same idea, air-cooled, shaft drive on most of them, and a production run so long that Yamaha effectively stopped changing it. When a manufacturer leaves a model alone for that many years, it is not neglect. It is the absence of anything left to fix. The Kawasaki Vulcan. The Suzuki Savage. A single cylinder so simple that describing it takes one sentence, sold as the cheapest new cruiser in America for the better part of 3 decades. None of these were built to impress anybody at a bike night. All of them were built to be sold in enormous volume, to people who would leave them outside and skip services, by companies whose entire reputation in the American market depended on those bikes not breaking. That is the specification that matters, and it does not degrade because a salesman lost interest. The dealer's refusal is a statement about floor, space, and labor rates. It is not a statement about the motorcycle. And that refusal is precisely what makes the price what it is. The trade-in market is where used prices come from. When dealers stop bidding on a category of machine, the only buyers left are private buyers, and private buyers do not pay dealer prices. A whole class of perfectly sound motorcycles gets pushed down to a price that has nothing to do with condition and everything to do with the fact that the trade has stopped wanting them. That is why you can buy a running, sorted, 20-year-old cruiser for $2,500, while a new one with the same power and the same job costs 10 times that. There is one more thing worth saying, because it undoes the strongest argument the dealer has. Remember the parts problem. Manufacturers stop making components, the shop cannot finish the job, everyone loses. That reasoning is sound, and on some motorcycles, it is a genuine dead end. A machine built in small numbers for a few seasons really can become unrepairable. But look at which bikes we are talking about. These are the highest volume cruisers those companies ever made. Hundreds of thousands of them, sold across decades, largely unchanged year to year. Every one of those machines that got written off, crashed, or left to rot in a yard became a shelf of parts for the ones still running. There are businesses that exist entirely to break them and sell the pieces. There are aftermarket suppliers making the consumables new because the market is big enough to be worth supplying. The parts argument is real for rare motorcycles. On a mass-produced cruiser, it is close to backwards. These are among the easiest machines in the world to find parts for, precisely because so many were built. Which tells you the 10-year rule is not really a judgment about whether the bike can be fixed. It is a policy applied to every machine over a certain age, regardless of how many exist, because a policy is simpler to enforce than a decision. If you get anything useful out of these, subscribing helps the channel more than it looks like it does. There are 2 practical consequences, and they are the reason this matters rather than just being an interesting complaint. The first is that if you own one of these, stop taking it to dealerships. You are asking for a service from a business that is structurally not set up to provide it, and both of you will be unhappy. What you want instead is an independent shop. and specifically an older independent shop. The men who run those places learned on carburettors. They have parts on shelves and in boxes and in their heads, and they are not paying rent on a showroom. Their labor rate is usually lower, and their patience with an old machine is very much higher. Every region has 2 or 3 of them, and they are almost never advertised because they do not need to be. Ask around at any gathering of riders, and someone will name one. The second consequence is the bigger one. Because dealers do not want these bikes. The people who end up owning them long term learn to work on them. Not out of enthusiasm, out of arithmetic. When the shop nearest you will not touch it, and the next shop wants more than the bike is worth, you buy a manual and a socket set, and you find out that a mid-size cruiser with a carburetor and a chain is close to the easiest motorcycle in the world to maintain. That is not a consolation prize. Ask anyone who has done it. The relationship you end up with is different from the one you have with a machine that goes to a shop twice a year and comes back with an invoice. So, the brutal truth in 2 parts. The first part is that the industry has quietly written your motorcycle off. Not because it is bad, but because there is no money in it for them, and a business does not keep doing things there is no money in. The second part is that this is the entire reason you can afford it. A cheap cruiser is cheap because a dealership cannot make a living from it. That is not a defect in the motorcycle. That is a $2,500 discount handed to you by an industry that decided you were not worth the floor space. Take the discount.